Welcome back. So apparently I need to do a video on the World Cup later on today because we just had the first wow moment. I'm going to wait and see if we have two absolute wow moments at the World Cup. But with hockey news for today, for all you fine people, for your December the 6th, for your Tuesday and all that fun stuff, let's go through first off some good news from Pittsburgh. Chris Letang on the ice skating with full gear. Doctors keeping an eye on him. He's being, maintained. This is not about getting him on the ice and getting him in a game, say, next week or anything. But it's a good sign that he's back on the ice wearing full gear and he's out skating around. So this is excellent news, of course, with Letang, who after his first stroke in 2014 missed 2 months. He was born with a hole in his heart. This is related to the strokes that he's had. It is just it's genetic, and so for Letang, it is something he's trying to come back from. I've seen people saying maybe it's time to hang him up. Doesn't look like he has any idea of potentially doing that. And so, yeah, Letang on the road to come back. And again, if he follows that same timeline he did the first time, not that a stroke is, one to the next, they're not the same. But 2 months, I mean, if he's back in a couple of months' time, that would be fantastic for the Penguins, right? So, best wishes to him and all of that. Colorado, a bit less encouraging news with Colorado. Jared Bednar really doesn't give any detail other than, they're going to be out for a while. And that's the word on Nathan MacKinnon, is that this is not just precautionary that they took him out of the game or anything. He's going to be out for a while. He did get hurt blocking a shot, and then he got hurt taking a hit. So which one of, or maybe both, end up hurting him and taking him out of the lineup? The Colorado Avalanche, I would give them the benefit of the doubt with MacKinnon in the lineup. You've got MacKinnon, you've got Ranton, you've got Makar. You've got the makings of a decent enough team that can win some games, but now you don't have MacKinnon either. That's going to make it really difficult. So for the Colorado Avalanche, they have already used 22 forwards this season. That was stated by Elliot Friedman. And 22 forwards at this point in the year is just ridiculous. There are 12 forwards you usually employ in your lineup. Some teams do the 11 and 7, where it's 11 forwards, 7 defensemen. So, yeah, they've had to replace almost every single one of their forwards at some point this season. Or at the very least, they've had to go through a lot of forwards as this season has progressed. So Colorado and Washington are the ones that really stand out when it comes to injuries, but they're not alone. As I stated in that video yesterday, there are a lot of teams that are dealing with pretty major injury issues at this stage. Slow starts. So Darnell Nurse stated after last night's game he's getting tired of the slow starts for the Edmonton Oilers, and the slow starts are costing them. This is a team that is overall 14-12. Overall, their record is decent, but it could be a lot better. And this is a team that absolutely can be a contender. And the first period might be what's costing them that contender status. They have 15 goals in first periods this year, but that puts them at 28th in the National Hockey League. And they've allowed 26. So they've allowed 11 more goals in the first period they've scored. Now, to their benefit and to their credit, they have come back 6 times when they're trailing after one. But there are plenty of times where that's not been the case, and it does get more difficult as the season goes along. So starting on time is important. Last night's game, I think also, we have to give some credit to the Washington Capitals for playing with a real sense of urgency. I think looking at the standings and looking at records, Washington probably realizing there is no room for error right now, and so they were just more ready than the Oilers. But again, that's not a new storyline with the Oilers. Being ready on time is important, and they're still figuring that part out. And speaking of figuring things out, St. Louis needs to figure out one thing that's been costing them, and that's 7 straight games. They have allowed 3 or more goals in a period. So that took place last night against the Rangers and in the 6 games before that. And regardless of what you think the issue is and where the problem lies, this is something they have to figure out if they want to get back in the hunt. They're now 11-14 on the season. They're not losing games in extra time either. So this is where the teams that maybe lose 4 or 5 in extra time end up with a better record. And for St. Louis, the periods where they're allowing 3 or more goals are costing them results. And so they're definitely up against it at this point, and this has to be figured out. I do wonder how long it's going to go like this before a move is made. and what that move would be for the St. Louis Blues. They do have the interesting question of, so Ryan O'Reilly's going to be a UFA, what do you do? The Blues historically, and I'm talking about in the last 5 to 10 years, have not been shy about trading somebody who is a pending UFA. Remembering when they did that with Kevin Shattenkirk, which seemed crazy at the time. But they're not shy about playing hardball with guys like they did with Pietrangelo, like I guess they did with Perron. Perron ends up in Detroit, right? So if they decide they're not going to re-sign O'Reilly, do they trade him at the deadline? And it may not be a sell either. The point I'm trying to get at here is not necessarily a sell if they do make that move, because they would probably be looking for something back as well. And you need to shake up the lineup. So O'Reilly, who would have been considered an untouchable as recently as last season, may end up being a guy who I don't hear a lot about, being traded at this point. But I think that's going to pick up because there would be a lot of interest in him. Team captain, Stanley Cup ring. There'd be some interest in him if he became available. How about his former team, Colorado, that has all these injury problems? And, I mean, if you throw some money in LTIR, you could make room for him. You could do a dollar in, dollar out kind of thing. But would St. Louis really want to do that for a division rival? I'm going to guess no. So, again, I'm just saying that would be an interesting fit. I just don't see St. Louis saying, oh, we should take mercy on Colorado, shouldn't we? No. But if he does become available, I would think he'd be in a lot of demand. So the Canucks game last night leaves me with another quandary. So they beat Arizona in a game where at points they didn't look great. Now last night they win a game against Montreal after they were behind 4-0. They came back, they were ahead 5-4, and then they were behind 6-5. Then they win it 7-6 in overtime, where Pettersson, beats out Matheson, which everybody has to make this big thing of, oh, it's Matheson, whatever. But anyways, I didn't even care about that part. But I don't know if this is necessarily a sign of a turnaround. The reason I say this is simple. Arizona and Montreal are both teams outside the playoffs. They're both teams going through a rebuild. Montreal's record is better than expected, but they are going through a rebuild. I don't think there's a lot that can be taken from this, other than the Canucks won games they should. Now, tomorrow night they have a game in San Jose. That's a game they should win as well, and that would get them back to 500 if they do. But I don't know how much more confidence I would have with the Canucks based on those 3 games. It's going to be about what they do against others. And again, last week was a terrible week for Vancouver. The week before they were very good. So are we looking at a team that's going to be very good one week, bad the next, and back and forth and back and forth? Because if that's going to happen, they're still going to find themselves not playing important games once we get to about February, right? So they do need to turn it around. I don't know what to take from last night's game, other than that was bonkers, and I don't expect to see that again. Tonight, a matchup to keep an eye on, of course, is Florida in Winnipeg, for the reason that Florida and Winnipeg, both pretty exciting teams to watch. But Paul Maurice coaching his current team in against his former team that he basically walked away from last year, there's going to be some motivation on both sides for Maurice to show that, I've got this team in good shape, and I'm going to beat my former team. And then for the Jets to say, hey, you left us, we're a better team now, and go out and beat their former coach. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes tonight. That should be a fun one. There are a number of fun meetings in tonight's matchups. And as I mentioned in the preview, the start times are staggered well enough that it could be relatively easy for me to follow what's going on. It could be relatively easy for others as well, which is always more interesting than the nights when there's just so many games and you can't keep up with everything. Seattle news, of course, they did bring up Shane Wright. They brought up Shane Wright because his 2 weeks in the AHL were done. He had 4 goals in 5 games for Coachella Valley. So it was a very successful move to the minors for him. And now he comes back up because 2 weeks is the maximum. But he's expected to be released to join Team Canada. So he's not listed on Team Canada's roster. They released that today. Neither's Dylan Guenther. But the plan is, or the belief is, that both Shane Wright and Dylan Guenther will be made available by Seattle and Arizona, respectively. Gunther's had a good start to the season in Arizona. I think he would be huge for the World Juniors. The other thing, of course, with the World Juniors is it gives us a chance to see Connor Bedard, and Fantilli's going to be on that team as well. And Fantilli, of course, seen as one of the likely top 3 prospects for next year's draft. So it's going to be a pretty star-studded team for the World Juniors for Hockey Canada, which, of course, has gone through all this upheaval over the last few months. They'll be glad to get it back to being about hockey tournaments and have a World Juniors and get that spotlight where it should be, which is on the product on the ice and what Team Canada is able to do there. So I think the Shane Wright experiment was good in the AHL. We'll see how it goes in the World Juniors and if that works out as well. Kind of an entertaining storyline for tonight's game between Dallas and Toronto. This is a battle of the Robertson brothers. So Jason saying to the media that his mother's going to wear the reverse retro of Dallas to the game. Also saying, though, during warm-ups, she'll be at Nick's end of the ice watching him doing the warm-ups. And he's not sure, when he was asked which kind of a hat their mom would wear, whether it would be Dallas or Toronto, he didn't have an answer to that. So it is something interesting to watch. And it's entertaining to me because I think Nick Robertson has a lot of talent. And I do wonder if Toronto at some point in time is going to see him break through, or if he has to break through somewhere else. Toronto has a lot of good, talented forwards. I do hope that Nick Robertson finds that spot in the lineup where they can't push him out, make him a healthy scratch, or he ends up in the minors. But there's the part of me, too, that I hope that at some point in their careers, not now, but some point in their careers, I think it'd be fun to see them playing together. They're both fast, talented forwards, and I think it'd be great to see them playing together. And so we'll see if that ever happens. But just a fun storyline for tonight. If you're a Kings fan, you'll be glad to know that Alex Iafallo has been activated from injured reserve. So the Kings getting a little bit healthier for tonight's game. And they're playing tonight, right? I think so. Pretty sure they are. Yes, they're in Ottawa. All right, so I'm just looking for the boards. I'm like, oh, yeah, there it is. So, yeah, Iafallo activated from IR. I would have figured when they're activated, they're in the lineup for that night's game. So that'll be a boost to LA's attack. They only have 3 wins in their last 10 games, so they could definitely use some boosts here and there. Speaking of boosts, the Columbus Blue Jackets, Kirill Marchenko. So in the offseason, there was a lot of hype about Marchenko, and he's going to play, and he's going to be great. Now, Fix Wolanski's been called up. Fix Wolanski at the NHL levels, his numbers have been not great offensively yet. The talent's there. But the reason I mentioned Fix Wolanski is because he was the number 1 scorer for the Cleveland Monsters. Marchenko, number 2 on the team, 16 games, 8 goals, 11 assists, 19 points. So now Marchenko's been called up by Columbus. Looks like he's going to be making his debut for the team. And it'll be interesting to see if other guys he's played with in Cleveland, if he ends up on the same line as any of those guys, and how he looks at the NHL level. Scoring above a point per game in the AHL is impressive, right? Especially if you've got a player coming over and learning North American ice. So all the best to Marchenko and to Columbus. It'll be fun to see how he does in the lineup. Because, again, there was a lot of hype in the offseason, and then he ended up in the AHL. But at least he's torn it up a bit in the AHL. That's good news. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.